Hi, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful Disability Pride Month. My name is Nico Meyering, and I am a white man with wet blonde hair, large dark glasses, and a dark blue shirt. I'm seated in front of a purple background. I use he, him pronouns. I'm here today with my friend Bob. Bob, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Bob Runkel from New York State. I'm wearing a blue, sort of like a nice, fancy shirt with cool designs on it, and my pronouns are he, him. And I am a podcaster with a disability. I've been doing this type of work for over 12 years, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it today.
Thank you, Bob. I'm excited to learn more about your journey. To begin, Bob, what does disability pride mean to you?
It means not being ashamed of who you are, even though at times you may feel ashamed at some parts of you, you have to embrace it. And shockingly, I'm still learning that day after day because it's never it's an ongoing journey of do people understand what I'm trying to do? But I'm more open about my disability now than I ever was.
That makes a lot of sense. And I love your answer because it talks about disability acceptance and disability pride as a journey rather than as a binary state.
Yeah.
I also hear you when you say that you're still working to accept it. It's an ongoing process to accept your disability.
Parts of it. I'm like, there are parts of me where it's like, oh, I can embrace this part of me. I can, love. Like I never used to, like my pop culture podcast, which we'll get into in a minute, the DJ Bob Show. I never used to talk about my disability on it because I never wanted it to be the focus of the show because I work primarily with companies like Nickelodeon and Disney Channel, all these major heavy hitters, and I never wanted it to be the Make-A-Wish sort of, oh, I'm doing this because he's disabled.
Right.
But then, once I started talking about it, it created a conversation between me and the guest that they wouldn't otherwise have. So, it helped in the long run.
That's fantastic to hear. I'm glad that you were able to be there to help someone.
Yeah.
As an aside, have you found that being more open about your disability has helped create those conversations?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Do you get a sense that those conversations have helped, if not yourself, at least other people down the line?
Can I share a quick story?
Of course.
So, recently, I interviewed somebody from one of my favorite films, Back to the Future. And
Ooh.
I talked to the guy that played Marvin Berry in the film. And it started out, we started talking about Back to the Future, and then we started talking about disability inclusion and how he handles disability inclusion in his work because now he's a college professor and he adapts and he changes, and it's like it was such a beautiful conversation, and I can't wait for people to hear it. It's coming out soon. But that's a conversation that he wouldn't otherwise get. So the fact that I can create that space for them to learn and to grow, even in an indirect way, it's not scholarly by any means, but it adds a dimension to me and to my podcast and what I do.
It's also community driven, and I really love and reflect that growth as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, I watched a lot of your other interviews, and it's like, we're still not there yet. And honestly, from an entertainment standpoint, we're definitely not there yet.
Hmm.
I mean, I thought it was a big deal when the new iteration of Blue's Clues for Nickelodeon incorporates ASL in every single one of their episodes.
Hmm.
And I spoke with the new host of the show, and he said at the beginning of every season, they have a meeting with him and they bring in an interpreter and, like, show him how to sign the words and how it's used. And I think that's really smart. Rather than it just being something on a script page, he takes the time and they take care of the audience.
I think that's really beautiful. It's something that I've also seen in my virtual meetings. More and more meetings, even outside of the disability space, will hire and use ASL interpreters. And more of my in-person meetings, events I go to, like comic conventions,
Oh
will
yeah,
have those interpreters, which is great.
yeah. I just love how it's being put at the forefront more than ever now.
Yes, yes, indeed. I love that you pointed out that disability acceptance, it's not like a straight line, right? There are some times where you backslide, there are some times where you jump forward, and you just have to be okay with where we are
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Story, but at least I was thought of.
Mm-hmm. It
Yeah,
sounds like they hold your expertise and your consulting in high regard.
yeah, and I've never done something like that. So what I'm gathering from that is, like, I have a voice and I'm using it well enough that
Mhm.
these people in the industry are trusting it.
Thank you for doing that.
I mean, it's not something that I purpose purposely do, but when it does happen, it's really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like you were in the right place at the right time.
Hmm.
Bob, what are some lessons that being disabled has taught you?
Uh, hmm. How much time? We can do a separate episode about this. Um, adapt,
Okay.
just straight up adapt, cause every day's gonna be different. Like, I knew that I needed more time, so we started the interview a little bit later than we said we would.
Yes.
So, thanks for being so flexible in regards to that. Um, like, just, and also find your own way of doing things. Like, with, for example, my podcast, which I sort of want to get into more about how I started that, if that's okay at some point.
Sure.
Um, with my podcast, I knew that I couldn't use like a full on mixing board. So I got like a touchscreen one. And then I got everything computer based. So I have minimal hardware. So, like, for example, this mic that I'm using right now
Mhm.
has a computer program inside it where I could do the levels on my Mac and not have any outboard gear. It saves space, it saves money, it saves time. So if you can find those workarounds, it's a win-win.
Mhm. I really respect how you've had to adapt in your own life. And I agree that adaptability and innovation have been two significant hallmarks of the disability community.
And you know what? I don't think these companies realize what they're doing for
Mhm.
people to, because this is not a product for people with disabilities. This is a industry standard microphone that just happens to have these things. So when I reached out to the company, I said, "You did good. Like you're fine. Like you're okay, and you created something wonderful."
I love that. What other podcasts do you do?
Well, the DJ Bob show is my main one that I do,
Mhm.
and I've been doing that for 12 years. But the DJ Bob show, I mean, it is a pop culture podcast at large, but I'm not afraid to talk to people that mean a lot to me. For example, uh, last year I went through a really difficult time. I won't get into reasons here, but
Okay.
we and I only wanted to talk to people that kept me safe. I did not want to let anybody else in for the podcast. I didn't book any major guests until I felt ready. But one of my interviews that I did was with my ninth grade history teacher.
Okay.
Just as a little, cause I wanted my audience to know Bob and not DJ Bob. There's a difference.
Sure.
So that interview happened, and she says to me, "You know, Bobby," cause like what everybody called me back then. She said, "I didn't know if I could teach you
Huh.
because you were my first student in a wheelchair, and I didn't know if I could, live up to what you needed." And
Mhm.
hearing her say that now to me, as a 28-year-old man, 27-year-old man, it's like that you don't really think about how these teachers and how these caregivers and how these professionals think of you and how to accommodate your needs. And that was really eye-opening for me. I wasn't upset by that. I honestly learned a lot just by hearing that.
Yeah. That sounds like it was a very powerful interview with your ninth grade history teacher.
Because not only was she my ninth grade history teacher, she was my IEP teacher, my lead teacher.
Ah, okay.
So she was the liaison between the other teachers, me, so she knew me so intimately that it, hearing that just meant a lot.
It's obvious that she cared,
Yeah,
and I'm glad that you had this person.
yeah,
I'm glad that you were able to stay in touch too.
yeah, like later. I mean, honestly, um, whenever I get a cool interview or something, I text her about it
Mhm.
before anyone else. It's just because when you're in ninth grade and you're in our predicament,
Mhm.
you're awkward by default.
Yes, that's true.
By default, everybody's awkward, but just the added component of a disability is just like, oh, another thing toppled onto this.
Yeah.
So she was there, and when I was in ninth grade, I would have like little, not meltdowns, but panic attacks where I didn't want to go to school.
Mhm.
And she was there. So to hear her talking to me intimately about this 10 years later from ninth grade, it really opened me up in a way I never thought I could be opened up.
That is really powerful. And I hear you when you say that you had some meltdowns, as you said, that related to going to school in ninth grade. I faced something similar when I was in middle school myself. It was a big transition time in my life. And
Yeah, because I feel like with us,
mhm,
and I don't know about you because we're just meeting, but with us, generally we have everything sort of not handed to us, but sort of done for us when we're
mhm,
a certain age. And as soon as a change happens, it's like a culture shock. Like, what the heck is going on? And one of the biggest, and I want to share this story. I talk about it I talked about it ad nauseum because it means a lot to me. So I
mhm,
want to share this. Um, so I was diagnosed with CP at the age of 2.
okay.
And right when I was 3 years old, my mom decided, let's take him to a children's center where he can thrive and where, kids like him can interact. So I went to this uh, place called the United Cerebral Palsy Children's Center,
Mhm.
and I went there from 3 to when I was 6. And my last year there was a version of kindergarten because it wasn't really uh, curriculum based. But then I went to kindergarten in public school. Now, what you need to know about me is that my mom uh, kept me back for from going to public school. So
Mhm.
the year I went to public school was September 2001.
Okay.
Now, September 2001, I'm in New York. 9/11 happened.
Mhm.
My school nurse's husband dies in the towers. I'm just navigating this new school. All this new stuff is happening. As a 6-year-old, I shouldn't be thinking about this stuff. But, it's how my cards were dealt, so I'll just do that.
Right.
But, you know, talk about adaptation and getting used to new surroundings. It is, if I stayed in that cerebral palsy school, that location, I would have been way more sheltered.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful that my mother did what she did to give me that glimpse of friendship and learning and growing, and because look where I am now, and look where we are now throughout all of our struggles and all of our challenges. And it has nothing to do with disability. Everybody goes through this shit.
That's true. Everyone does have challenges.
Everybody everybody just goes through the awkward times of adolescence, like you know, but I'm so grateful to have these platforms and this wonderful support team that I wouldn't have otherwise had.
Thank you so much for sharing that story.
You got it.
And thank you for being vulnerable like this with me.
And that's the reason why I wanted to talk to you, is because you, like me, create a safe space, and I would love to have follow-up conversations with you like this, because most interviewers talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
Mm-hmm.
You listen and then talk. There's a difference. And I have to commend you for that. I don't know. This is easily one of the best interviews I've ever done because of how vulnerable it is. And I thank you for this.
Of course, it takes two people to create that space. What
Yeah.
are what are some, if I could flip the question, what are some things you've had to unlearn during your disabled journey?
Oh, you know what? I've been dealing with this a lot recently because
Oh, okay.
I I that I've had to unlearn to not be so self-conscious about how I look and what I if I startle, will they make fun of it? Like, like if I just what my go-to phrase would be like, well, what if they? Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? And I'm still struggling with that. And I'm lucky to have my amazing girlfriend who supports me, and and she's always like, is it? And she goes, is it? She goes, it's just all you need to focus on is you, and that's it. But sometimes your brain plays tricks on you, and you don't want to do those things. So I've had to unlearn that sort of what if I do this or what if I do that, because honestly there have been some moments in my life, and I still deal with this, where I feel that way by default because of family issues and whatnot. But I'm learning and I'm growing, and I'm trying to unlearn those sort of tropes of what I do.
I think that's very valid. And I do see this same thought process in myself. I'm also someone who used to worry a lot about how people would see me. And ultimately, I've been working on coming to terms with the fact that I can't control what other people will think of me or how exactly they'll react around me.
Yeah, but on the flip side, let's say if a noise makes me startle or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hate it when people go, "Oh my God, did I scare you?" It's like, no, it just happened. Like I hate when people put the billboard on it,
Mm-hmm.
because when they make it more noticeable, I'm more self-conscious. So if they were just quiet about it and let it happen, like, oh, that's just what he does, I would feel better.
Sure.
But they don't.
Sometimes there's a lot of difference between disabled normal and able to normal, to
Oh
use the
yeah,
phrase.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So those are some of the things.
Thank you, Bob.
You
This has
got
been
it.
a really fantastic talk so far.
Of course.
My last planned question is, what is one thing that you want able bodied people to know about disabled life or the
Huh.
disabled community?
Okay. So when I first saw your conversations and you asked this question, I knew exactly how I was gonna answer it, and here you go. One size doesn't fit all,
Okay.
and I'll expand upon that. So, I was, and I've told this story a lot, but again, it shaped me. So, in 7th grade, my mom wanted me to make new friends. Or no, 8th grade. End of 8th grade. My mom wanted me to make new friends. So we joined a Special Olympics bowling league. Which I thought would be fun, right? It got to the point where it was fun for a while. It was fun. I'm still friends with my coach. But one of the other team members was a nonverbal girl
Okay.
who would basically be sleeping the entire time, like not really getting much out of it. And her mother was very adamant about her making friends.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nico, if a person is sleeping the entire time, how are they supposed to make friends? Right? Like, it's not being rude, it's just fact.
That's right.
So, the next. So, the mother has a fit with the manager, and she doesn't come back for a few weeks. And then she comes back and she goes, Bobby, I want you to join this group where we sing songs, finger paint, and tell stories. Would that be of interest to you? And I'm just like, no, I have a final exam. Next week I cannot attend that. Like, it was like, you know what I mean? It's like, just because it works for you does not mean that it works for them.
Yeah.
So one size doesn't fit all.
If you've met one disabled person, you've met one disabled person.
Yeah. So that's a common thing that I want to tell people.
I think it's an important lesson to learn. It's a problem that we see when spaces make accessibility features and where previously excluded spaces have tried to become more integrated with disabled people's needs in mind.
For sure. Well, I want to go. Yeah, so that's what I want to tell people. So, yeah, that's it. That's one size doesn't fit all.
Thank you so much. DJ Bob, I want to give this time to you to talk about any social media profiles you want to promote, any podcast projects. Where can people find you online?
Well, you can find me everywhere. It's kind of creepy, actually. No, you can go to www. Wait, who asked the W? Anyway, I just did it. DJBobShow.com to find everything DJ Bob. I mean, we've got a bunch of great new episodes coming out in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. And you can find me on Twitter at DJ Bob Runkel. That's DJ Bob, DJBOB RUNKEL. And I'm pretty much everywhere. And also, you can follow my Instagram with the clever name Runkstagram. That's RUNK Instagram. Because, it wasn't taken, so why not?
Right.
Yeah, so that's where you can find me.
Take up your space. We love to hear it. DJ Bob, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Of course. This has been so fun.
Have a fantastic rest of your day, my friend.
You got it. Bye.
Bye-bye.